podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The Boy Scouts knew they had a problem.
Parents gave the Boy Scouts the most valuable thing they had, their children. And they told parents, you can trust us.
They're unbelievably heartbreaking stories.
This is about how to move from victim to survivor.
When the detective says he confessed to abusing you, I no longer had to prove to people that I was abused. I was free.
The powerful new investigative documentary, Leave No Trace, A Hidden History of the Boy Scouts, streaming now on Hulu.
Love tennis with Matchpoint Tennis Championships. Take it to the courts with the brand new tennis sim with dynamic gameplay and a true taste of tennis.
Welcome back to the Love Tennis Podcast, or Podlet as I should call it, with me, James Gray of iNews and iNewspaper. It is just before 1 o'clock in the morning here in London, which is why I am on my own for this one once again. I couldn't convince Calvin, who has an 11 a.m. first round match with Henry Patten and Julian Cash, more on them shortly, or George Beljour, who has work at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I mean, so do I, but this is all my job. To join me, so you'll just be hearing from me. Excitingly, in a few minutes, you'll be able to hear from Henry Patten and Julian Cash, one of Britain's best doubles pairs. Not an hyperbole from me. That is just true. They've been in great form, as you will hear. They spoke to me a little bit earlier today ahead of their first round match at Wimbledon. Both of their first time playing Wimbledon seniors. Julian played juniors before, but for Henry, is his first shot at Wimbledon, full stop. It was really nice to talk to them. We've got to know them a bit over the summer. Calvin obviously knows them both very well, and I hope that you'll enjoy the chat. I should apologise in advance for that interview in terms of the sound quality. We had some pretty serious technical issues this morning at Wimbledon, so we had to improvise. I thought about canning it all together when I listened back to it, but the guys are in such good form and I think have such good stories and are interesting to talk to and about that I hope you'll appreciate. It's worth listening to anyway. But before any of that, there's lots of news from Wimbledon to catch up on. We've just finished day 2 of the championships, which was closed by Serena Williams. Is it her last match ever at Wimbledon? It might well be. She was beaten by Harmony Tan of France, 7-5, 1-6, 7-6, and then a deciding tiebreak, which Tan won 10-7. It was a real ding-dong match. I think, with the greatest of respect to Harmony Tan, there are quite a lot of players in the world who would have put away Serena fairly easily tonight. And as I say, that's not a slight against Harmony Tan. She's clearly got some talent. You know, she plays a lot of nice slice backhands, a lot of nice slice forehands as well. You know, she's been up to 90 in the world, I think, not that long ago. She's only just outside the top 100 at the moment. So she clearly can play, but Serena did not play well, with the greatest of respect to her. I think she would probably concede that as well. She was fairly evasive afterwards, but I don't think she would agree that that was her best self. It was her first competitive match in a year, and surely no one would have expected her to produce her best play in that match. It was thrilling. It may not have been high level, but it was dramatic, and it was late night, and they finished, you know, at sort of, I think 20 to 11 local time here in London, which maybe 10:30, which is pretty late. They can only play till 11 because of the curfew, so almost as late as they can go, really. Serena came in afterwards and said very little, quite frankly. I was surprised she did press at all. I thought she might avoid it, given this whole kind of swing. She's been pretty unenthusiastic about speaking to the media in any shape or form, already playing by many tournaments' rules. And yet she came in, but she was pretty tight-lipped. The question that really everyone tried to ask her in a number of different ways is that your last match at Wimbledon? Maybe the clearest she put it is, that's a question I can't answer. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Who knows? Who knows where I'll pop up? Which, you know, is suitably evasive, but maybe does sum up how she feels at the moment, that she can't know. I think she will play the US Open. She might have a warm-up tournament before that, although I think that's unlikely. And then, I think it's probably 50-50 she plays Wimbledon next year. She certainly, I think, walked off the court not thinking that was her last match. There was no goodbye. It was a kind of brief fist bump in the air and then off she went. Maybe not wanting to steal Harmony Tan's moment, I don't know. It certainly didn't feel like goodbye. Maybe just au revoir. She followed Rafa Nadal on centre, who was pushed pretty hard by Francisco Cerundolo, who I was surprised by how well he played. Given, he's not someone you would necessarily look at and go, he's going to be able to play on grass. I think he's only played maybe 6 career matches on the surface before now. Ryan Peniston beat him at Queen's in a pretty odd match. Peniston beat him 6-love in the first set, and Cerundolo looked like he had no interest, like he had somewhere else to be. Well, he certainly didn't look like he had somewhere else to be against Rafa, particularly in the third set, and I would say in the first set when he had opportunities but couldn't take them. Went down 2 sets to love, pulled back the fourth and had a 4-2 lead in the fourth, I should say. He pulled back the third. But unfortunately, Rafa Nadal did what Rafa does best, and he roared back to win the next 4 games and seal the match. I mean, Rafa live is pretty impressive at the best of times in relatively dry, sunny conditions, although he did say the sun made his serve pretty tricky. He's particularly good on grass in those conditions, and I thought he was really impressive, and I enjoyed watching him, which, during the first couple of days of Wimbledon, when it's extremely busy for journalists, it's quite difficult to enjoy watching tennis matches. And actually on this occasion, I really did enjoy watching Rafa, and I didn't see any after effects of a sore foot, but Rafa's very good at masking injury and making sure that if he is hurt, you don't know about it unless he chooses to tell you. So, who really knows on that front? All we can do is judge by the score. There were elements of rust there, as you'd expect. I mean, Cerundolo is not world number 100. He is world number 42, so he can clearly play a bit. I think there are reasons to be cheerful for Rafa Nadal. Probably for Fran Cerundolo as well, but particularly for the victor, Rafa Nadal. And then the very first match on centre was Iga Świątek, who beat Jan Effet for the loss of 3 games. It wasn't as straightforward as that. I think 6-love, 6-3 flattered Świątek a little bit. A fairer scoreline might have been, 6-4, 6-3, because there are a lot of lengthy games. Fett did have opportunities. Świątek was pushed. She was 3-1 down in that second set and then 1-5 on the spin. So, business as usual, really, for Iga Świątek. 37 wins in a row. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Significant results elsewhere. Maybe the biggest shock of the day, although it was something that I predicted in my preview column, was Maxime Cressy knocking out Felix Auger-Aliassime in 4 sets. It was a really impressive performance from Maxime Cressy, at least certainly if you asked Felix Auger-Aliassime. He said the quality of the serve was impressive. I've played the likes of John Isner, Milos Raonic, Riley Opelka, but he's with these guys. He's definitely with these guys. If he keeps that going, I see this guy being, even on hard courts, really tough to play. Clay could be different, but I see him being like those guys, being able to be in top 20 and more. He has really high qualities, better than his ranking today. Yeah, we'll see how it goes for him. What I think I said, and I've said before, is that it's very hard to find rhythm against Maxime Cressy, so he can cause upsets, and so it proved. There was also an incredibly unsavoury incident, or series of unsavoury incidents on number 3 court, where Nick Kyrgios beat Paul Jubb in 5 sets. It was a great effort from Jubb, first and foremost. He played really well. I thought he picked the Kyrgios serve particularly well. There were times when Kyrgios would hit 132 on the spot, and Jubb would be there to make the return. I thought he did that really well, in certain parts of the match. Kyrgios was chuntering. He was saying all the time, I shouldn't be losing a single point to this chump, which is pretty unfair on any professional. He was having a go at one of the line judges, one of them in particular, who he told to get off the court. He thought she wasn't up to the job. And then he started getting abuse from the crowd, he says, and after he finished, he spat in their direction. Overall, a pretty petulant set of behaviours, which he refused to apologise for afterwards. He didn't really see that he was complaining about the crowd being disrespectful to him. while also being incredibly disrespectful to Jubby, to the officials, the line judges. Nick Kyrgios won me back over the pandemic with the way he behaved. I'm afraid today was not the behaviour of a man who deserves anyone's respect. So, really disappointing that. Good day for the Brits. Ryan Peniston won. Katie Boulter beat Clara Burrell. I'm sure we had one other one, but I can't find it in my notes anywhere. So, if you've got another, you can remember the other British victor, then, I don't know, well done you, and you don't need me to tell you. Heather Watson, that was it. She completed a 3-set win over Tamara Korpach that hung over from yesterday. But, and Jack Draper beat Zizou Bergs as well. There you go. I missed a whole load. But the big shock, really, for the Brits was losing Dan Evans. Lost to Jason Kubler, the qualifier, in straight sets. Never really got near him, to be honest. And, yeah, it was... I mean, he was pretty blunt about it. He just said, look, I'm a big boy. Sometimes I'll lose. That'll happen. Like, there'll be plenty more chances, he said. Although you guys think this is the 2 weeks, there's 3 other slams and there's 30 tournaments in the year I'll play. These things happen. That's what happens. He says it's disappointing, it's frustrating, it hurts. It's not nice to have a fiance, coach, all them lose as well. It's not just me, it's a team effort. That's how it is. You got to pick yourself up again and go again. He was asked whether with Peniston, Draper and Alistair Gray, actually, who I also didn't mention, beating Tseng, said, do you feel like you're missing out on the party? And he just replied, no, I can have a party on my own. I'm sure he's capable of it. Tonight might not be the night, but I'm sure he can. Let's look ahead to tomorrow, which is or today, as most of you will think of it, and actually technically, as today it is, Wednesday, the first Wednesday of Wimbledon. Centre court is Djokovic, Raducanu, Murray again. Murray up against Isner, which might not be a particularly edifying clash. But the first two, I think, will be Raducanu against Garcia. Should be a pretty power-heavy match. I think Raducanu is possibly the underdog in that. As is Thanasi Kokkinakis. Much bigger, of course, earlier on in the day against Novak Djokovic. I hope that's an entertaining match. Thanasi's got plenty of shot-making ability, and I think he will relish trying to make Djokovic a bit uncomfortable on court. Number 1 court, Jule Niemeyer is opening up against the Net Kontaveit. I would watch that because Jule Niemeyer has a massive serve. She has probably the biggest serve in the women's game. Pretty close to 200 kilometres an hour, 120 odd miles an hour for those who work in old money. I would definitely think about trying to get some eyes on that match since it starts at 1 and centre doesn't start till past. Cam Norrie is up against Jaume Munar and Maria Sakkari against Victoria Tomova. I think the match to watch tomorrow, well, I mean, there's a few options. Sinner against Mikael Ymer will be a lot of fun. Mikael Ymer is a fun player anyway. Yannick Sinner, I'm told, is starting to look a little bit more comfortable on grass. So that would certainly be worth keeping an eye on. I would say similar about Tim van Richthoven and Riley Opelka. You know, van Richthoven has been on this amazing run. He's a really good player on grass, and Opelka's really lacked form coming in here. So might be an opportunity for a very decent size. Well, I don't know if upset's the right word. Well, wildcard beating a seed. Of course it's an upset. And I think Tim van Richthoven's run is worth following as well. I think the match I'll be watching first up tomorrow is Casper Ruud up against Ugo Humbert. Humbert came through a pretty lengthy first round match. He won in 5 sets up against Thomas Echeverry, who's been in pretty poor form this year. So I wonder if Humbert is struggling for form a bit as well. Well, I know for a fact that he is. He hasn't won consecutive matches since the Olympics last year in singles. So that tells you probably all you need to know. Casper Ruud is maybe starting to find his own feet on grass. He lost to Zizou Bergs in an exhibition last week, but how much we can read into that, I don't know. He beat Albert Ramos Vinolas in the first round, so he is into the second. And I don't know, once you get a few matches under your belt, things can change for you on the grass. Also worth watching, Angelique Kerber against Magda Linetti. Obviously, Linetti sprung a few surprises this year. Angelique Kerber is someone who knows the courts at Wimbledon extremely well, and they're up on court 2, so anything can happen out there. It's a little bit different. Someone like Linetti won't get quite so phased as she might on centre or number one. I think it'd be really interesting. Just finally, I should talk about COVID, because Marin Cilic and Matteo Berrettini both pulled out today, having tested positive for COVID. We're in a very weird situation right now where players are not required to test. They are asked if they're ill to stay away from the grounds. But I asked Liam Brodie about this, and I think he spoke pretty honestly and very well about it. He said it's like a class of unruly school children. If you're giving rules to adhere by, then you listen much more carefully. But if you're told you're not going to have to test anymore, no one's going to test themselves on purpose. He said, at the end of the day, if you've got a bit of a cold, you're playing Wimbledon main draw for 50 grand and the chance are more, I'm not sure some of the lower ranked guys are going to, Scouts honour, take themselves away and do a COVID test. That would be stupid in my eyes, business-wise, for someone to do that. I think that's kind of what's been going on a little bit. The context for this is also that Alizé Cornet came out and told L'Équipe, the French newspaper, that basically everyone at Roland Garros had COVID and they all kind of agreed not to talk about it, and there was a bit of an epidemic. Now, if you think about the financial side of things, obviously Cilic and Berrettini, they don't really need the Wimbledon prize money. I'm sure they'd love it, and they both had good chances to go deep and make very good money, but it's not going to stop them flying to the US for the hardcourt swing. Whereas, a bit further down the pyramid, you're a qualifier or something and you're feeling a bit crook, you're still going to turn up for work. You're still going to come to Wimbledon. You might try and avoid people in the locker room, but no, I'm afraid it's just not going to happen, is it? So I'd be interested to see if there are any more withdrawals, and if we maybe hear of a similar situation a few weeks later when a player breaks ranks and says, everyone had COVID, it was a disgrace. We'll have to see. It'll be fascinating. That's probably all I've got time for. You'll hear from Henry Patten and Julian Cash next. I hope you enjoy hearing from them. They're up first on court 8, I think, tomorrow, playing doubles against the number 13 seeds. Best of luck to them, of course, and thank you very much to them in retrospect for coming on and sharing their stories with me.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. There are some monthly expenses you just can't get away from, like insurance. You might be looking at your expenses thinking you're going to have to pause on your DIY project, stop collecting vinyl, or even give up your daily coffee fix to have great insurance. Talk about a nightmare. It's a good thing State Farm knows everyone has a budget, and they have a range of options, like insuring your ride and your home with surprisingly great rates on both. With State Farm, you can also personalize your policy, so you get the coverage you need at a price that lets you keep up with your projects, add to your vinyl collection, and continue to enjoy your coffee habits. So forget about giving up what you love to have great insurance. For surprisingly great rates, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.
This episode is brought to you by Cheetos Deja Tu Huella. Deja Tu Huella means leave your mark, and that's exactly what Latinos are doing all across the country. They're rewriting the rules and pushing the boundaries in their communities to leave their own unique mark. They use their gift, their superpoder, to make an impact, whether it's through art, music, fashion, food, or something else. And Cheetos will celebrate what they're doing by shining a light on their transformative power. The Deja Tu Huella program celebrates those leaving their mark in Latino communities. You can also celebrate by checking out the new podcast, Batman and Buried, on Spotify. Batman and Buried is presented by Cheetos Deja Tu Huella. Visit Batman and Buried on Spotify to learn more.
It's so nice out there in the Mexican markets where chilies stretch in the sun, high in the mountain air between backcountry skis and kids doing the first snowplow, or next to the pool after a long day of forgetting what day it is. We're all here to get out there and come home more us than the us that went away. And when you save on travel as an Expedia member, you can travel even more. It's so nice out there. So let's go. Expedia. Made to travel. Terms apply. See site for details.
Welcome back to the Love Tennis podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by, and it may take a while for me to get through all the titles, the 2022 Surbiton Trophy champions, the Ilkley champions, the Nottingham champions, the Shrewsbury champions. I've probably missed some off, but Henry Patten and Julian Cash are here, clearly the most informed doubles pairing, or one of them, around. Henry, of course, has our very own Calvin in his corner, and I'm looking forward to learning exactly what it is Calvin does all day that isn't drinking Coke and eating minstrels. But first, I should say to both of you, congrats on what's obviously been a great season and on a Wimbledon wild card, which kicks off tomorrow. Maybe a good place to start, Julian, if you tell us a little bit about how the two of you got together as a pairing. Was it sort of 40 love at first sight, if you'll forgive the pun?
Well, we were both in college and have kind of wanted to play together for a while. But with singles schedules and just kind of being all over the world, we've not managed to do that yet. But there was a good swing of tournaments in the UK. That like those 4 25Ks in Nottingham, and we had just kind of had a chat, agreed to play those 4 together and then have a crack at the grass. But it's gone a little bit better than we might have hoped.
I was going to say, Henry, I mean, you presumably, I mean, I know Wimbledon's always on everyone's radar, but when you first got together, I guess back in earlier this year, was it in the back of your head that you two could end up at Wimbledon?
Absolutely not. No. You know, when we turned up to those Nottingham 25Ks, Wimbledon felt like it was a very, very long way away. Yeah, no, definitely not. Couldn't have imagined the success that we've had together. So yeah, very, very pleased to be at the championships.
And was it, in terms of a connection, I always think it's weird the way doubles partners, because, you know, Calvin talks a lot about how sometimes it's pretty much like car keys in the bowl at sign-in and see who you can get in with.
Yeah.
How quickly did you kind of get that connection on the court together? Obviously, you knew each other off the court. Yeah,
I mean, we've known each other for a long time. We're good mates off the court. We've been planning to play together. We've been talking about playing together for ages. And then, yeah, obviously, finally, the schedules kind of aligned and allowed us to do it. But yeah, I mean, the key thing for us is that we are really good friends. We get along really well, and obviously on court that helps us a lot. Helps us to stay relaxed and enjoy playing together, which I think really has been a pretty big key to our success. Yeah.
I remember talking to Louis Kaya, who I know you've both worked with a lot, and he was telling me about Joe and Rajiv Ram, you know, the world #1 doubles pairing, and he talked about how he had to force Rajiv to kind of be the hype man, you know, be the guy to make noise in the pair. Julian, who's the sort of excitable one of the two of you? Who has to pick the pair up when things are going badly?
Well, we may have had the same conversation about 5 days ago with Louis.
I see.
I got a little bit told off for not doing it enough, but yeah, it's supposed to be me.
Right.
We're both pretty mellow guys, pretty relaxed, which along with being friends, I think is also why we gel on the court. We're kind of in like we play tennis, I guess, in a similar frame of mind. But yeah, I guess it's going to be for me to try and maybe get back to my college days a little bit and start shouting a bit more.
You mentioned college. I'm right in saying you went to Oklahoma State, which I think makes you a Sooner. I might have got that nickname wrong.
No, those are our rivals. Don't do that to me. We're Cowboys.
Right. Okay. Very good. What drew you to? I mean, there's lots of guys we know. I mean, Cam Norrie being the most high profile, but what was the kind of decision process between going over to America and just tell me a bit about your experience there?
For me, a whole bunch of reasons, to be honest. Like, the big thing for me was education. I wanted to make sure I had something to fall back on. I don't think I was mature enough to go full time on tour at 17. I've got a late-ish birthday, so I was pretty young. Great matches, great training, a good chance to experience a lot of things before kind of getting out there. So that was my main kind of 3 reasons, I suppose. But yeah, for me, it was fantastic. I loved every minute of it, coming from an individual sport, being thrown into a team. I really thrived in that environment. Still really good friends with a lot of my teammates now. Actually, one of them's here with me. He's been supposed to come for 5 days and he stayed for a month. So yeah, it was a great experience. It taught me an awful lot on the court, off the court. And I'm really glad I made the decision to go.
Henry, I know you obviously went to States in the US as well. I think UNC, I'm right in saying, which do I not think UNC has a big reputation as a party college? Is that not what it's supposed to be?
No, so I didn't go to UNC, which is the big school in North Carolina. I went to UNC Asheville, which is part of the UNC system.
Right.
But yeah, Asheville not quite as much of a reputation as a party school. I'd say we made a pretty good effort at changing that, but yeah, it's kind of similar to Julian. I wasn't quite as good of a junior as Julian was. He was one of the top juniors. and I wasn't. So for me to continue playing tennis in a competitive environment, it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
You mentioned, and I'm sure Jules would never give himself this much credit, that you were a good junior, Julian. I read the other day that you beat Matteo Berrettini at Wimbledon Juniors.
I didn't think he was that good on grass at the time, but it turns out he's actually not bad. No, to be honest, I was in a kind of weird headspace when I was a junior. Like as I mentioned before, like studies were really big for me. That was kind of a big focus, like kind of driven a little bit by my family, I suppose. And so I didn't actually play as many events as I would have liked, or as most of the people, I guess, around my ranking were playing. So yeah, like I mean, when I went into Roehampton, which is the kind of build-up tournament to Wimbledon for the juniors, and then into Wimby, I hadn't played a tournament for a couple months.
Wow.
So I just kind of went in swinging and, enjoying the grass. Like it's not something that we play on a lot, although people think that the Brits spend their life on it. That was kind of my first experience on stuff, and I really enjoyed it and just had a lot of fun, to be honest. So no, I didn't necessarily think he was going to be who he is today, but yeah, I knew it was a good win for sure.
Tell me a bit about Wimbledon itself. You're obviously here playing doubles for the first time. Henry, what's been kind of the weirdest or most memorable thing about just being around the grounds and hitting at Orangian on championship courts and stuff?
I think it's just brushing shoulders with a lot of the players that we've kind of idolized, and obviously over the past few years have only really been able to watch them on TV or stream. That's probably the strangest thing. Definitely kind of getting your laundry done for you is something that I can get used to.
Anyone in particular stick out in terms of guys you're brushing shoulders with?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. We were warming up in the gym yesterday, and Novak was kind of milling around casually, as you do. Obviously, quite a lot of the doubles guys. Like we played a practice set with Jamie yesterday, which was pretty cool. Jamie and Bruno. So yeah, it's constant. They're all around. There are lots of them. It's nice to be in kind of close proximity with them and feel like we're obviously part of the same event with them, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
The big question that really the one I've been building up to is Calvin is your coach. What's he actually like as a coach? When I watched you on court the other day, it seems like he doesn't say a lot. Is that kind of typical? It's not the Calvin I know.
No, he's usually there just to pick up the balls, really. Brings me water, towels, No, Cal's great. We haven't been working together for that long, so we started working together at the start of the Nottingham 25Ks that we won. So, I mean, in terms of his coaching record with me, has been pretty exceptional.
Yeah.
Obviously, I try and give him as little credit as possible for that, but the stats don't lie. No, Calvin's great. He really studies the game, and he really knows his stuff, especially for doubles for us. He's done quite a bit of work with Louis Caillet, who's obviously kind of the doubles guru, as we call him. So he knows the systems inside out, and that's just so helpful to have him around. On court, as a guy, personality-wise, he's pretty fiery. Can get pretty pissed off, but he knows that I'm quite a relaxed guy. So I think he's probably working hard to kind of tame his own tone down a little bit, which is probably difficult. He has about 7 Cokes a day. Minstrels, I don't know, but Maltesers, loves his Maltesers. I'd say that's probably his favorite pre-game snack. Went and got his haircut yesterday, which I didn't think I'd ever see. But hey, that's obviously something he has to take care of. No, Cal's great. We get Cal's great. In all seriousness, we get along well. His banter is good. And yeah, I mean, kind of similar to what me and Julian were saying about our partnership. Like even coach-player relationships, it's so important to get along well off court.
It's quite enough giving Calvin too many compliments, as you say. It's important to keep his incredibly shiny head as small as possible.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Love tennis with Matchpoint Tennis Championships. Get your rackets ready for a thrilling and immersive tennis gameplay experience. Pre-order now from Game.